In these times, and especially in light of the Reverend Dr. King holiday, it is fitting for us to recognize the value and importance of civil liberties and constitutional rights. We are the descendants of people who only a few decades ago didn't always have the right to vote, were not respected as human peers, experienced discrimination, hardships, and even death for the only reason of being African American. The facts of history, as verified by events down through history to this day, confirms that racism and white supremacy are not only a stain on the fabric of our nation, it is part of the threads that form and shape the fabric of our nation. And no, the fabric of our nation is not all bad. As we celebrate this Reverend Dr. King holiday, let's remember the man, not only for his quotes, but remember him for his faith in God that motivated him to serve and ultimately give his life for the humane treatment of all people and for the civil liberties of all Americans. His work was consistent with Scripture. Isaiah wrote in chapter 1, verse 17, "Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow." Jesus said in Luke chapter 4, verse 18, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, the recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed." The Apostle Paul wrote in Galatians, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not allow yourselves to be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." The error of Christian nationalism is in seeking to use the levers of government power to attempt to force people to follow their version of God, which of course leads to inhumane tactics and punishing people who do not follow their version of God. This has always been the outcome of merging church and government, which is why people left England. They cast off the oppression of an authoritarian king who believed that he was divinely appointed to do whatever he wanted. It is also the reason why there is no scripture in our Constitution. They never intended the nation to be ruled by religion, but that is exactly what many people are trying to do today. The view of a Christian nationalist is that the nation should look like themselves. The United States Constitution, therefore, is a barrier to their objectives, which is why they disregard constitutional mandates such as due process and allow injustice against people. Their patriotism is rooted in self-service. The brilliance and the righteousness of the approach of Dr. King's movement was to be salt and light, influencing government to do right by the people. They did not seek to control government, but to influence people in government to make righteousness and justice the standard. To Dr. King, the U.S. Constitution was a promissory note to all people, especially black people, at a time when they were not treated as part of those entitled to unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Theirs was a genuine patriotism rooted in serving others. In this presentation, you're going to hear a few quotes from Dr. King, but I encourage you to read deeper into his work that we may not reduce him to quotes. And following will be a part of a presentation by Dr. Jemar Tisby from something he produced on January 16th entitled Beyond the Quotable King. As an historian, Dr. Tisby brings out details that most of us were never aware of.
I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the wall question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, Say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life behind. And that's all I want to say. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word of song, if I can show somebody he's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian, or if I can bring salvation to a world once wrought, if I can spread the message as the Master taught, then my living will not be in vain. Yes, Jesus, I want to be on your right or your left side. Not for any selfish reason. I want to be on your right or your left side, not in terms of some political kingdom or ambition, but I just want to be there in love and in justice and in truth and in commitment to others so that we can make of this old world a new world.
So you can understand, like, he's growing up steeped in the church, steeped in preaching, the songs, the traditions, the care, the community, all of that. That is in his upbringing. And so much so that he knew early on that he wanted to go into ministry. He preached what's called a trial sermon at the age of 18 and was ordained shortly thereafter. And then he embarks on a career of theological education. So he goes to Morehouse College. Many people don't know this, but he was 15 years old when he enrolled at Morehouse College. Obviously he was brilliant, but there was this special program during World War II because there were so few students. They were trying to enroll more students to keep tuition going and everything. So he got in through this program and he goes to Morehouse College, but then he's not done. He goes after that to graduate school at Crozier Theological Seminary. And I told you he was brilliant. He graduated from Crozier as the valedictorian. He was the valedictorian of his seminary class, which is phenomenal. And then he's not done. He goes on to get his PhD in systematic theology at Boston University at the age of 25. I didn't even start my PhD until my 30s, and he's done with his PhD in systematic theology at the age of 25, whereupon he takes his first solo pastorate at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. Now, what does this have to do with King the Christian and the preacher? Well, I want to talk to you about one of my all-time favorite and what I think is one of the most important stories from King's life. And it's what I call his kitchen table moment. King's kitchen table moment. So King had not been in Montgomery or at Dexter Avenue Baptist for long when the Montgomery bus boycott breaks out. He is selected as the spokesperson and quickly gets catapulted to the forefront of what becomes a nationally known movement. Now, because of that prominence, he's also a target for death threats. And so he writes about this a couple times in his books, and he talks about one night he had gotten home late. He was trying to go to sleep, but he couldn't sleep. And he gets this phone call in the middle of the night. And it is a white supremacist threatening racial terrorism. They say, if you and your family don't get out of town, we're going to blow up your house. We're going to bomb your house. Now, mind you, he's newly married and they have their first child who's less than 1 year old at that point. Now, what would you do at that point? You're getting bomb threats at your home with your brand new family. A lot of us, most of us, would get the heck out of town. But what King does is he goes into the kitchen late at night. He makes himself a cup of coffee and he has a little talk with Jesus. And the punchline is this. He talks to God and says, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have the strength for this. I don't know if I can keep going. And this is what he narrates. He says, then it happened. And it seemed at that moment that I could hear an inner voice saying to me, Martin Luther, Stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth. And lo, I will be with you even until the end of the world. I heard the voice of Jesus saying, still to fight on. I heard the voice of Jesus saying, still to fight on. Now, I think that's significant because there are many people today who are trying to discredit King and his faith. Specifically, they're saying, well, he wasn't orthodox in his Christian beliefs. And we have prominent Christian leaders wondering, pontificating, pondering, musing, was Martin Luther King Jr. even a Christian? That's what they have the arrogance to ask. And a lot of these folks come from the evangelical tradition, which makes a huge deal out of a moment of conversion where you say the sinner's prayer, you just have this light, this sort of Damascus Road moment where the scales fall off your eyes, you become a Christian. Well, King had that. As he narrates his kitchen table moment, he's saying, I cannot rely on or my mother, of my upbringing, of being a preacher's kid, of being raised in the church. Like, none of that is real enough to give me the courage to stand and fight this battle in the face of literal bomb threats against my wife, child, and me. But King marks this moment when he's praying alone at night in the midst of life and death danger as a turning point. He knew in that moment when he heard this inner voice saying, still to fight on, that he could do it. And he does. And for 13 years, from 1955 and his assassination in 1968, he is the most prominent civil rights leader in the country. He wins a new Nobel Peace Prize. He's globally known. But what if he hadn't had that kitchen table moment? We cannot understand King's activism unless we understand the faith that animates that activism.
I trust this presentation has informed you and educated you and given you perspective to help us understand why we celebrate Dr. King's legacy and why the work still continues.